Coming up, the Lakers lose in LeBron's return to the court, and the Cavs are finally headed back to the playoffs. This is Locked On Game to Game, NBA.
Every game, every team, every angle. Locked On Game to Game, your team every day.
Welcome in. You're listening to Locked On Game to Game NBA. Local experts joining us to go over the biggest stories on the hardwood. I'm your host, Kainani Stevens. Thank you for making Locked On your first listen every single weekday. We're going to start out with the Mavericks. Luka Doncic scored 40 points last night, but he also got himself a suspension because of another technical. The Mavs also lost for the second time over the weekend to the Charlotte Hornets. Locked On Mavs is running out of explanations for why Dallas has been losing.
There are no words to justify the two losses the Dallas Mavericks just took. There is no explanation for why a team with aspirations to win a playoff round, make the playoffs, do things, could lose 2 games in a row to the Charlotte Hornets with Luka Doncic and Kyrie Irving. There are no explainers for how a team with 2 all-star starters could score 104 points against the Hornets without multiple players. I'm running out of things to say. I will continue to say things on Locked On Mavs daily, but this Dallas Mavericks team is done. That's it. Pack it up. This team will not win a play-in game the way they're playing right now. Something's got to change. And it's got to change quick, because it's not it.
LeBron James returned to the court for the Lakers, but Los Angeles lost at home to Chicago. Locked On Lakers has more on LA as they fight to get out of the play-in game.
This is Andy Kamenetsky, co-host of the Locked On Lakers podcast, and the Lakers lose 118-108 to the Bulls, falling back below 500 again. LeBron James returned after missing 13 games with a foot injury, played fine, looked like LeBron at times, looked rusty at times. He also came off the bench, which, considering he played 30 minutes, felt more disruptive than whatever was trying to be accomplished with that move. And it was also emblematic of a game where the Lakers were sloppy on both ends of the floor. They had a disjointed rotation. They missed 11 free throws, had 18 turnovers, and Anthony Davis had foul trouble. They will, interestingly enough, play the Bulls again on Wednesday in Chicago. A lot more to get into, so make sure you're subscribing to the Locked On Lakers YouTube channel and that you make Locked On Lakers your first listen wherever you get your podcasts.
The Grizzlies picking up a big win on the road to help their playoff standing. Locked On hosts with both teams go over the final in Atlanta.
The Memphis Grizzlies continue to build their stranglehold on the number 2 seed in the Western Conference, continuing to strengthen their position in a big road victory over the Atlanta Hawks on Sunday evening. I'm Joe Mullinax of Locked On Grizzlies, and Ja Morant returned to the starting lineup for the Grizzlies against the Hawks, and that was predictable. Morant was always going to be a starter once again. Perhaps what was a little less predictable, at least when it came to this particular game, is the offensive output of the Memphis Grizzlies. An extremely impressive 54 almost percent, 53.9% from the field, 40% almost from 3. The Grizzlies assisted on 28 of their 48 made shots. The offense was extremely effective. The Grizzlies' backcourt, Morant and Bane, 52 points. Tyus Jones off the bench, 13 points. Luke Kennard, 14 points. Between your 2 point guards and your 2 shooting guards, that is extremely effective and efficient production. Never mind Jaren Jackson Jr. and Xavier Tillman shooting a combined 13 of 20 from the field themselves. If the Grizzlies are able to perform at that level, it's going to be a long night for anybody they play.
Hello, friends. My name is Brad Rowland. The Atlanta Hawks fell at the hands of the Memphis Grizzlies on Sunday afternoon/evening, and the Hawks now fall below 500 once again this season. It was a night that was familiar to Hawks fans. They lost this game in close-fought fashion, never trailed by more than 9 points in this one, but never also had any control over the proceedings either. Atlanta had opportunities down the stretch to close the gap and maybe even take the lead, but offensively it sputtered at the end of the game, and defensively it was a familiar tale. The Hawks just struggled to get stops the entire game. The Hawks didn't shoot the ball well in this one to make things even worse, and no one was particularly electric for Atlanta, but still at the end of the day, a loss for the Hawks, and they hang around 500 as they have been doing all season long in, again, very familiar fashion on this Sunday. We'll get into all of this game and more on the Locked On Hawks podcast.
Coming up, the Cavs are back in the playoffs for the first time in 5 years. This is Locked On Game to Game NBA. Today's edition of Locked On Game to Game is brought to you by PrizePicks. It's the super simple way for you to play daily fantasy sports. What you do is you pick 2 to 6 players. If they score more or less than their PrizePicks projections, you can win up to 25 times your money on any entry. And you're not competing against anyone else, just those projections. So download the PrizePicks app or go to prizepicks.com to sign up and play daily fantasy sports. First-time users get a 100% instant deposit match of up to $100 with the promo code Locked On. So if you deposit $100, PrizePicks will give you $100. If you deposit $50, PrizePicks will give you $50. So don't forget to enter the promo code Locked On at sign up for an instant deposit match of up to $100. Welcome back. You're listening to Locked On Game to Game NBA. I'm your host, Kainani Stevens. Thank you again for making Locked On your first listen every weekday. The Cavs clinched their playoff spot by blowing out the Rockets on Sunday, and our Locked On Cavs host has more as Cleveland celebrates its first playoff berth without LeBron this millennium.
Chris Manning here, Locked On Cavs, and the Cavs are playoff bound with a win over the Rockets on Sunday. Cleveland is headed to the playoffs for the first time since a 2017-2018 season. That, of course, was LeBron James's last year in Cleveland, and it's the team's first playoff berth without LeBron James on the roster since the 1997-1998 season. A lot of players on this team, including Evan Mobley, Darius Garland, were not born yet. Jared Allen was a baby. This is a team that has grown up post-LeBron, has really accelerated what this team could be. Garland and Mobley and Allen and Mitchell have all really taken a big step forward, gotten this Cavs team to a place where they have the best net rating in the league. And they took care of business Sunday to clinch a playoff spot. We'll talk about it all on Locked On Cavs.
Mikal Bridges scored 44 points, but the Nets still lost in Orlando yesterday. Locked On Nets recaps that loss, what it means for the playoffs, while Locked On Magic celebrates their third straight victory.
Locked On Nets coming at you following a very disappointing loss by Brooklyn, visiting the Orlando Magic, coming off the high of beating Miami with a massive third quarter on Saturday night. The Nets came falling, crashing back down to earth in this one against the Magic. Mikal Bridges dropped 44 points. You think that would be the pathway to an easy victory for Brooklyn? Think again. No one else was really able to get anything going. The rest of the team shot 2 for 26 from 3. The guy's not named Mikal Bridges. It was a real struggle dropping the Nets back into the playing game, a situation that they might be looking at going forward here with the Miami Heat. We're going to talk about this game, the weekend as a whole, and what to expect for Brooklyn going forward. All that's going to be up on Locked On Nets.
This is Philip Rossman-Reich, the host of Locked On Magic, as the Orlando Magic defeat the Brooklyn Nets 119-106 for their third straight win. To me, the key moment in this game came in a report on the Bally Sports Florida broadcast during the second quarter. Jamal Mosley, according to Dante Marcatelli of Bally Sports Florida, got into his team, despite them leading, despite them having the lead, having a good chunk of control over the game, telling them to stop the turnovers and stop the offensive rebounds. To me, this is a huge sign of the team's growth because they're starting to raise their standard. They're starting to say, we are more than just a team that wins. We are a team that plays our basketball no matter what. We are playing not to the score, but to the standard. And that's what playoff teams do. Playoff teams don't settle for mediocre or okay. They know that there's a bigger game out there. And while the Magic are probably not going to make the postseason this year, they're still alive in the race technically, and they're still out there trying to get big wins. This was a big win. A great third quarter helps the Magic pull away and get an easy victory over the Brooklyn Nets at the Amway Center.
The Wizards came back from down 17 by the end of the third quarter, but they couldn't do enough to beat the Raptors down the stretch. Locked On Wizards recaps why Washington came up short.
What's up, everybody? It's your boy Brandon Scott from Locked On Wizards again. The Washington Wizards fall to the Toronto Raptors tonight, 114-104. And how did they lose this game? Well, easy. Number one, turnovers. They committed 18 turnovers, which led to 25 points off of turnovers for the Toronto Raptors. 2 second chance points, 27 second chance points. The reason the Toronto Raptors got 27 second chance points is because they won the battle of rebounding. They out-rebounded the Wizards 53-45 and offensive rebounds 18-12. So again, they lost this game by losing the battle of rebounding and turning the ball over. So the Washington Wizards will look to get back into the win column Tuesday night at 7 o'clock at home against the Boston Celtics. So again, I appreciate everybody and have a good night.
The Minnesota Timberwolves snapped the Warriors' 9-game winning streak at home, and Locked On Wolves tells us how Minnesota got the job done.
The Minnesota Timberwolves pulled out another single possession victory. They've now won 3 in a row as they held on to beat the Golden State Warriors on Sunday at Golden State by just 3 points. I'm Ben Beacon, host of the Locked On Wolves podcast. This was a weird game. Anthony Edwards scored only 13 points on 14 shots. Karl-Anthony Towns had only 14 points on 16 shots, but Cat hit the eventual game winner with the Wolves down 1 after a Kyle Anderson steal. 9.9 seconds on the clock. Wolves down 1. Cat hits a trail 3 from the left wing in transition. The Wolves are able to hang on down the stretch. Anthony Edwards got a great contest on a Steph Curry game-time three-point attempt in the left corner as time expired. And this was all about Naz Reid leading the Wolves in scoring with 23. Cat's clutch shot. Some overall good defense from the Wolves. Jordan Poole caused some problems in the second half, but for the most part, it was the Wolves defense. Naz is scoring throughout, and Cat's clutch shot that got the Wolves the win. We're going to break down the whole thing, including the Western Conference standings on Locked On Wolves. Subscribe to Locked On Wolves for all things Timberwolves.
Costly end-of-game turnovers, very questionable coaching decisions, and the Splash Brothers continuing to shoot poorly all lead to Gary Payton II's debut with the Golden State Warriors spoiled. I'm Cyrus Sauces with your Locked On Warriors Locked On Now recap of the defending world champions losing a critical home game to the Minnesota Timberwolves tonight, 99-96, thanks in large part to end-of-game turnovers by Draymond Green and Jordan Poole, coupled with very questionable minute distribution by Steve Kerr. Case in points, Jonathan Kuminga, who's been playing lights out, only played 14 minutes and change in tonight's game, and the Splash Brothers' poor shooting continues. Kylan Mills and I will break all this down and so much more in tomorrow's Locked On Warriors as the team now falls behind the Timberwolves in terms of tiebreaker with just 6 games remaining in the regular season.
That's a wrap for this edition of Locked On Game to Game NBA. Thank you for making Locked On your first listen every single weekday. Make sure you're subscribed to Locked On NBA and your favorite team's Locked On podcast on YouTube and wherever else you get your podcasts from. I'm Kainani Stevens. This has been Locked On Game to Game.